was your brick?
The brick was good, so that means yeah.
So it could be the battery.
And
If you take the battery out and then try it.
yeah, I think the battery's relatively new, so I think it's the power supply. I think that it must have gotten, bent and then,
Oh, yeah, that's sometimes. I had a Sony that had that, and I had to replace that connector.
yeah.
That's fairly easy to do. You don't need any soldering.
And I
So
don't,
maybe that's the thing.
I don't think that the hard drive should be fine. It's just, oh, is this on? I think I'm on.
Okay, everyone. The second session this morning, and we start with Greg, who has a very good talk about contracting and the GPL. Thanks.
Excellent. So, yeah, I think everyone cares about the GPL, so that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about. Hi, my name is Greg Rundlett. I was born and grew up in Rhode Island originally and have lived in the Boston, Massachusetts area after attending the University of Rhode Island and also the Université d'Orléans in France. In school, I dual majored in biology and French. I thought that I would be a doctor, and I always thought it was important to speak more than one language, so I did that. So as soon as I graduated, I became a stockbroker for Dean Witter Morgan Stanley. Right after graduation, that's when I moved up to Massachusetts, and I trained at the former World Trade Center, in fact, so it's a bit surreal to be back in New York City now. About 7 years later, with the advent of the internet, I finally found, I guess, my true calling in technology. My father was an engineer, my twin brother's an engineer. I couldn't escape it. And one of the early companies I worked for was a venture-funded startup that used wiki technology and Perl on the back end to make content authoring easier for non-technical users by translating wiki markup into HTML. This was long before Markdown or MediaWiki and some of the cool stuff we get to play with today. So basically, I'm self-taught in technology, and a lot of those experiences have shaped my perspective in the value of free software. I believe in free knowledge. I believe in free software. I'm a long-time GPL advocate, but the GPL, despite being 30 years old, is, I think, still fighting an uphill battle against multiple forces. MediaWiki, the software, is one of the most popular free software projects in the world, and thankfully, MediaWiki is one shining example of a GPL project that is winning. For many good reasons. And I think there is probably no better free software project to contribute to. A few years ago, I made the decision to start a consulting company and to focus on enterprise quality free software solutions. And one client that I worked with, a major billion-dollar software company, had thousands of pages of technical documentation locked up in a proprietary system. We all know how proprietary systems can lock up your data. And they had already decided to adopt MediaWiki as their new documentation platform, and so they hired me to create a custom extension that would import all that HTML documentation, transforming it into a MediaWiki format. And this talk is about what that experience was like and how did I get them to release the code under the GPL. Why did I want to make this talk? Because I think that it's the little guy who wants to stand up for the freedom enshrined in the GPL, while major enterprises generally have lawyers who want to minimize risk, the risk of making things free. In short, I want to make it easier for GPL advocates and MediaWiki consultants to do their work and simultaneously maximize the benefits of that work. it's not just the legal aspect that can be intimidating or unfamiliar. So I'm going to kind of cover a little bit about the whole picture. But I hope to shed some light on those general aspects of working with enterprise clients that MediaWiki hackers or extension developers or just small business consultants may not be familiar with. I know it was all a learning curve for me, even though I've got a lot of experience in this area. So let's see. So the problem, there's a few quick notes here. This is what I'm going to cover on I can't really see it from here, but the company environment, the context, and overall the goal, like I said, make it easier for GPL advocates and MediaWiki consultants to do their work, maximizing benefits of that work. And basically, I think in the end, my message is, don't sweat it. So, next slide. When you contract with a small client, it's kind of easy, right? It's like, I can do this. You write up a simple agreement, you get right to work. The enterprise market's different. There actually are very similar experiences between the retail side and the institutional side of Wall Street for those familiar with financial services. If you've got a small ticket retail investor, you might get a trade after a few phone calls. And on the other hand, if you try to work on the institutional side of Wall Street, you're talking about making deals after anywhere from 6 months to 3 years of grooming a potential client. And there's more than one contact, more than one decision maker. It's a process. So when you're consulting with enterprise clients, there's going to be a contract management office. There's probably a purchasing office. They're separate from the business unit or the manager who wants to hire you to do the job. And after you get some inquiry from a prospective client, the guy with the money to spend, they're going to tell you they need MediaWiki and they need to translate some pages or whatever it is. But your first order of business really is to work with them to become probably what they'll call an approved vendor. You got to get on our approved vendor list, right? That means probably signing what's called a master services agreement or an MSA. It might also be called an independent contractor services agreement. It depends on, different companies will call that different things. Under that umbrella, there'll also be other things like a statement of work, SOW, or a purchase order, the PO. And it most likely means getting insurance if you don't have it. These are all things that, if you're going to consult in the enterprise market, this is just the arena that you're in. But before I get into that, let me just touch real quickly on payment terms, because it's everyone wants to get paid, right? And as a consultant, you probably want to get paid right away. The client, on the other hand, might have standard terms that say something like net 30 after invoice, or the invoice only after acceptance, and our payment might be in 45 days, can't be guaranteed before 45 days or something, and it's scary, right? The thing is that net 14 might not be possible, but if the payment terms may or may not be negotiable depending on how flexible their accounting procedures are. There's, in the enterprise market, there's a whole nother group. It's not one person handling accounting, it's a whole division, and a CFO of the company, et cetera. So you can ask, and you should ask, to be clear, what's negotiable and how flexible are they? Can they, you can easily, as I've done, you can easily say to the prospective client in their contracting office, I try to generally have net 14 payment terms with my clients. Is that possible? Generally they're not an adversary. Everyone's got their job to do, and so they'll answer the question, and so it doesn't hurt to ask, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Managing cash flow is obviously important to you, the small consultant, and it's important to any size company. So make sure you address the payment terms. And also, unfortunately, I'm here to tell you, make sure you address your cash reserves accordingly, so that you can manage that on your end. A quick show of hands: how many people here are consultants? Work for a consultant? Do consulting? Right? Okay, good. Let's see. So the problem with the GPL, right, is all your base belong to us. As soon as you walk in, the standard contract terms, and I think, did I mess up my notes here? I might have to cheat and go back. Let's see. Whoops. All right. Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me, 1 second, find, where did we go? Oh, that's not going to work, is it? No. Shoot. Well, so anyway, I apologize there. I had a problem with the notes. But so with the master services agreement, let me just talk about that. As the name implies, it spells out the general conditions under which you're going to operate as a vendor, right? It's standard legal boilerplate that the vendor, you're trying to customize it, likely is not going to happen. It's like the cable company contract. It's take it or leave it. So when you encounter that master services agreement, if you read it, you're just going to be scared away, like if you read the fine print on any kind of contract. And ultimately, when like all these click-through contracts online, who reads them? You just click it and move on. And that's, unfortunately, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not giving you legal advice, but I'm just telling you, like, what you got to do is you got to click it and move on. Because underneath underneath that umbrella, then the individual work is going to be controlled by the statement of work or the purchase order. And so while the MSA will say stuff like the enterprise owns all the copyright and the patents and any discoveries that come out of the work, and that the consultant is going to warranty the product, the reality is that which is completely at odds, right, with the GPL and the copyleft paradigm and patent covenants that might be written into the license of the GPL. And also the general disclaimer on all software that you've ever seen that says that there's no warranty, including any warranty of implied merchantability. So if you read the details, you're just going to say, what? What are these guys talking about? But I guess you shouldn't really sweat those differences because, again, while that kind of defines the terms of the engagement, the details in the statement of work, that's where you can actually start to put in the specifics. That's where you actually expected to put in the specifics, the deliverables, the timelines, the pay rates, the specific staffing if the client wants to know, who's on my team in this particular project. So again, the key takeaway is that if the language in the statement of work is where you can bring up the GPL nature of the project, and that you can have a disclaimer on warranty, for example. And you can make it clear to the client that they're going to benefit from the GPL, but you don't have to be the advocate. And this was a personal challenge for me, because being a longtime GPL advocate, I found it difficult to take that hat off in the context of a client engagement. I'm trying to convince everyone about the goodness of the GPL and stuff, and that's really, I guess I had to go through some 12-step program or something like that, first admitting I had a problem and then recognizing how to solve it. You can talk to the people if you feel like there's clarification needed, but and I did this in the case of HTML to Wiki, just saying that, look, this work is going to be more valuable to you, the company, and less risky if I, the consultant, if I'm allowed to retain copyright, because that allows me to release the code as GPL on MediaWiki.org or GitHub, and it kind of has to go with the program. And the client still can still be granted a non-exclusive, royalty-free, worldwide right to the work product, and they can do whatever they want with it. But the reality, too, is that they're a huge software company. They've got products and services. In this particular case, they're never going to productize or sell an extension to MediaWiki that creates, wiki markup out of HTML. This is purely, piece of work that is goal-driven, right? Not product-driven. So that's where you can address those issues within the statement of work or purchase order. Now, my notes were not synchronized with the slide, and I apologize for that, but let me just talk for a minute about the insurance aspect. In insurance, it's another thing that you could drive you nuts when you first encounter it. You come into a company, their standard terms are going to say, well, yes, we do require workers' compensation insurance, employer's liability, general liability, auto liability, excess liability, professional errors and omissions insurance, network security liability, and your head can spin. Again, it doesn't hurt to ask or just point out, I don't have a commercial vehicle. So is the commercial insurance actually mandatory? I won't be traveling for this engagement, and so is commercial, vehicle insurance mandatory? Because how do I do that? And what you might find is that the client can say, oh, yeah, we'll just waive those requirements. It's not a requirement. On the other hand, the general liability policy, what's called a general business insurance, general liability, and also the professional liability, which is sometimes called errors and omissions insurance, those insurances will probably be required or at least good to have, because it's kind of like you can wear your badge and say, like, yeah, I got insurance. And even a $1 million, $2 million policy is not that expensive. It might be $1,000 a year as a business expense. And typically what a client's going to want is they're going to want, what's it called, a rider of subrogation or something, I forget. But it basically names them as being covered under the errors and omissions, and so they can't be sued for some copyright infringement or whatever. So does that cost anything? No, it doesn't. If you've already got the $1,000 policy, You contact your insurance agent, you say you need the such and such client added, and they just add the name to the policy. So a little bit of legwork, but not really a dollar outlay. Let's see, collaboration, cooperation. I think let me go back, because back again. I covered the lead time, so that's what I skipped. And I apologize, it wasn't in my notes. The lead time is one thing that again, you have to kind of account for that in your pricing model and your typical engagement. You got to figure out if you're going to do discovery, and discovery is going to take a while, just tell your client that, look, I know you want to hire me, but you haven't come to me with a full RFP that specifically lays out everything that you want done, so therefore there's going to be some upfront discovery process. We'll usually go through a week of discovery, and it's a $5,000 process then we can write up a statement of work for the first phase of the engagement. We'll define some deliverables in that period, which we can then spin into another statement of work. And so that's one thing that you can do to both get things off the ground, right, with an initial discovery, and then what typical, I think, and I'd love to hear, and that's what my next slide points to, is the collaboration aspect. Love to hear from other consultants and from enterprises in the room if this is how you typically work. But you can do things in phases with a statement of work period and define deliverables, and then that just leads to the next steps, right? Which might be further testing or further refinement or installation and migration to production or training at the end of the engagement. So it's not like you have to have everything defined up front, and you just realistically won't. So let's see. Yeah, so again, my preference would be to see more MediaWiki consultants working together to share their war stories and their experiences, because I think the market is large and largely untapped. I think, as they say, a rising tide floats all boats, and that means when there are more people winning with MediaWiki, it propels more enterprise demand. More enterprise demand means there's more work for everybody. I'm not competing personally with WikiWorks or AlloWelt. I think we're all in this together competing against Microsoft and SharePoint, and I don't even know if there are other solutions that compare favorably in the knowledge management and wiki space. But I think in closing, I want to offer some advice that I heard once, and that is, don't sweat the small stuff. Make the big stuff small stuff, and don't sweat that either. So as a result of that engagement, where I was able to import thousands of documents from HTML into MediaWiki, and more importantly, release that extension as a GPL for the whole community to use and improve. And this link here. Well, the first link is to my website. The second link is to the extension, and the last link is just some additional resources. I kind of collect everything and just put it out there on my wiki, sharing it and using it as my own resource repository of knowledge and good information. So if you want to check that out, there's definitely some helpful links there, like GPL contracting in the municipal services market or something like that. Good papers, places, groups like Idealware that focus specifically on using open source in the nonprofit sector. And again, I'd like to see, if anyone else wants to, share war stories and resources and that kind of thing. I think we're all in this together, and the more visibility that MediaWiki has as a product, as a solution, as the preferred solution, as the thing that took an organization that was barely sputtering along on SharePoint, but then launched MediaWiki and took off, those types of success stories and resources can really propel the whole market and a brighter future for everyone. So, thank you.
I'm sure that with so many consultants in the room, there must be someone who has to say something about this.
Hey, Greg, you mentioned you had some success with some of your clients in regards to convincing them to allow you to own the work, and that way you'd be able to share it open source. Can you describe that a little bit more? Because it seems like that's always a really big challenge. Trying to get around that. I guess the proprietary issues.
Right. So it depends, right? Like there's a contract that I'm working on right now where I'm not doing extension development. I'm just doing MediaWiki, migration, fixing up their tangled installation and upgrading everything and doing all kinds of just kind of like DevOps and systems engineering and that kind of stuff, integration and migration and moving stuff from, physical plant into the cloud and kind of accomplishing more of the IT side. And so I don't really care. Their language is going to say that they own all of the technology and patents and whatever. And I'm like, in reality, it doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't have to fight for control or ownership of the intellectual property because they can't reach inside my head. You can't take what I know. And they're never gonna, like, if I write a shell script that, does some sort of like an Ansible shell script that, or I'm sorry, Ansible script, not a shell script. If I write some, or I use some script that I have, they're never going to come after me. Their legal department's never going to come after me for using that and saying, we own that. It says on line 13 of paragraph 3 on page 56, whatever, So in that regard, I just don't sweat it. On the other hand, when I'm doing, extension development, then it does become important. And usually the business, the hiring manager, right, or the business unit who's got the problem, they get it. They're using MediaWiki. They know it's free software. They definitely know that there's this GPL thing in open source. So they understand that you're just playing with that code. And they also don't really generally care about, like, does the company own that code? So they can kind of be an ally if there's a sticking point on getting to a contract with the legal office, with the project management office. But it can be, I guess, in the case I'm talking about with HTML to Wiki, there wasn't a lot of pushback. I mean, I just said that you understand that I'm developing an extension for HTML, for MediaWiki. The MediaWiki platform is GPL. It would benefit the company if I can release that code. It's none of the code is going to be anything proprietary to Acme widgets, to the company, right? It's going to be specifically for operation of the MediaWiki installation. And if I can publish that to my friends, the community, the world at large, then and here's, I'm sorry, I didn't it took me a while to get to this answer, but the way you convince them is to say, hey, look, after I do this work, I'm gone. I'm not going to be on your payroll anymore. I could get hit by a bus. I'm not going to be here to maintain this software. And by releasing that software under the GPL, you can get anybody, not just your employees, your staff, to maintain it. You'll find that other people are going to just show up and maintain it for you. And so your Mr. Client, your MediaWiki installation probably won't go away. You're hopefully going to be on that platform. You've made an investment in that platform. You're probably going to be on it for the next 5 years. MediaWiki's definitely going to move over those 5 years. It's going to upgrade and move on to the next version. That software platform's going to change, and if you want this extension to change with it, you can either keep me on retainer, and I'd be glad to do that, or you can just release it under the GPL, because then it will play nice with the software, and you might find that there's 10 other companies that will pick up that piece of software, that extension, maintain it for you, and you're now riding along free. So they get that. When they know that their investment in the platform, they want to preserve it and protect it and reduce risk. And so that's really one way I think that really addresses it.
I like what you say about, there's enough room for all of us or something like that. I forgot what you said.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a very, very small pool of MediaWiki savvy consultants. And it's hard to find us out there. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the reasons that I really would like to have people like you join us in the MediaWiki stakeholders, because it gives us a voice with the foundation, but it also gives us a place to be visible and be found as well. So, and I like what you said about the GPL. I'm a big fan. So anyway, go on.
Well, thank you. I agree with myself. I think that the more that we cooperate as consultants, I'm probably not going to win any contracts in Germany. So if I happen to discuss something with somebody in an airport, airplane, ball field, online, whatever, and then they mention some opportunity in Germany, I'm going to say, do you know Alo Welt? And someone's in the UK, and I could say, do you know Richard Carter? And someone's in New York City, and I say, well, I'm in Boston, and do you know, Yaron in WikiWorks? Because, and I do that all the time. I'm not trying to corner the market. I'm trying to, and it helps, I think, in the sales process. And I've done this specifically with Yaron. I've mentioned to clients, hey, or prospective clients, hey, have you seen, Yaron Koren? If you're trying to figure out MediaWiki, he wrote the book on it. You should go get his book. He's got a wiki consulting business. He does hosting. I don't really do that right now. I'll do the implementation for you. I can do some migrations, the DevOps side, but if all you're just looking for is like turnkey hosting, so I will, and I think it reflects good on me as a consultant to communicate to clients that I've got a whole network of experts. I'm not, it's not just me. So I agree.
So I just want to try and frame this. I'm not sure. I I do understand where you're coming from. Let me come at it from the other side, from the corporate side. This is just to help me understand. Part of it is when you do consulting. I mean, when you do a Media Wiki consult, I mean, do they typically want you to come in to build a specific, software solution, install it, or is it more of a here's the problem we're trying to solve, like, the Word or HTML to Wiki? Hey, we've got a dozen gigs of HTML files and stuff that we want to put into Wiki. Can you help us do that? Right? Because I'm framing the question as an operational requirement as opposed to a technical one, right? Because if they hire you to come in and translate their HTML into Wiki pages, they don't care how you do that, right? They just want you to do it. But if they hire you to build a tool that allows them to, say, convert HTML into Wiki, into the future, I mean, they may want, and this is just an example, I mean, they may want that for themselves and deliberately not want it to be public because they see it as a competitive advantage. I mean, this particular extension may not be the perfect example of that, but I can see, having a custom developed extension that would benefit everybody, not be, they don't want it to be GPL and available to everybody because, they want to have that competitive advantage. And I don't know if you've come across that or how you would address that.
I haven't come across that yet, and I honestly don't think I will. I think I'll come across the perception that they want to keep it, but I think it's just something that you need to address and say, I can't imagine, Johnson & Johnson, NASA, whatever, JP Morgan, I can't imagine that they're in the business of creating some proprietary distribution of MediaWiki. Both because it's already GPL licensed and they don't own the corpus of that code, and also because whatever extension or modification that they might be making, I don't see how it would be some revenue generating proprietary or competitive advantage versus their competition. So like authorization, if there's some great new, some new authorization standard that falls out of the W3C or the Internet Engineering Task Force or something like that, and JP Morgan Chase is the first one to bundle that up to add it on to MediaWiki, I don't see how it's going to be a competitive advantage versus, Bank of America or whatever.
Right. Well, and I guess I come at it, working with the military and the Department of Defense. I mean, the whole idea of operational security. It's not so much the code itself as what you are doing with the code, right? I mean, if your competitors, if your competition in the financial services industry knows what you're working on, right? They know where you're going, and they may try to beat you to market on it or whatever. And so I just wanted to come, look at it from that perspective, not so much, because I'm with you. We have so much stuff that but yeah, I'm with you. I just wanted to bring that up from the other side as possibly a challenge that you might face, depending on who your clients are.
Right, absolutely. I think that the generally can be it can be a challenge because there's a perception that if they own it, less risk, and if they don't own it, big risk to competition, big risk, financially or whatever. So I guess it's my job to just say, actually, it's the other way around. If I develop some fantastic extension that makes some data visualization, possibility with MediaWiki, and you got these cool graphs, or some project management tool that displays Gantt charts and whatever, that is not part of the core business of whatever client I'm dealing with, and they are making a pretty substantial investment in employee training and platform decision and whatever, however else you want to characterize that in the MediaWiki platform. And if you just kind of like refocus and say, well, MediaWiki is under continuous development by an army of volunteers and paid professionals, and there's version 126, 127. I noticed when I first met you that you were running 123, and that's kind of why I came in here, to upgrade you guys and get you onto the visual editor and, and install these extensions that you don't have that other people developed. And if you just kind of refocus and reframe and say, the real risk is that 12 months from now, you're going to be 3 versions behind, and there's going to be some minor changes, but changes nevertheless, and how the extensions operate and so on. So anything I develop, if it's GPL, and you can still own it, and you can do something if you think it's going to, again, you can grant to the client a non-exclusive, royalty-free, worldwide, perpetual license to that code, so they can kind of own it, but it's non-exclusive. And the reason they want to share that particular code is it protects their investment in the platform, and it reduces risk in the platform.
Yep, I just wanted to add that it doesn't have to be for a competitive advantage. It could be just a simple matter of policy, that any code developed on site for a project cannot leave is not allowed to leave, or is not allowed to be made public. Sometimes it can be just simple as that. That we don't get into the business of making available what was developed for an internal project.
I think if I heard your question right, you're saying that sometimes you might just do some custom development and just give it to the customer anyway and be done?
No, I was just echoing what he was saying, but it wasn't necessarily, doesn't have to be necessarily in the context of we're developing something custom for MediaWiki that will give us an advantage. It can be as simple as we are developing something to help us accomplish something with MediaWiki, but we don't want to get in the business of making it public, maintaining it, or answering questions, and so we're just keeping it for ourselves as a matter of policy. That there are policies in place that are saying if the code is developed for one of our projects, it doesn't go elsewhere. And sometimes you have to fight those policies or get them amended.
So I'm taking issue with the whole concept of ownership here, because under the GPL, if they own it and they share it, you can still have it. But in this case, it can be GPL'd and not shared, and they can own it and you'll never see it again. So I'm first of all, I'm a little confused about why you're so focused on actually owning it, but then I think there's also some confusion on my part maybe about the applicability of well, not the applicability. There's some confusion about why this is even an issue, because if it's developed and it's a MediaWiki extension, it is GPL, and if it's not shared, it is, because it's using the code. If it's an extension, it's integrated so tightly. Well, he disagrees with me, obviously. I'm not a lawyer.
The reason it's not necessarily GPL, and I'm not a lawyer either, but when it doesn't even invoke the license until it's distributed.
Right.
So if I sit in a room and develop the code and give it to a client and they just use it in their enterprise, and nobody's ever been given access to that code, in that case the GPL's never been invoked. There's been no distribution. So I think you could, I think I could develop an extension and give it to the client and say, yep, it's yours, and I just move on with my life. but and not be in violation of the GPL of MediaWiki and or the extension that I developed. But the rationale that I would say to the client to say, hey, let me take this code and give you a copy of it, but also let me publish it up on GitHub, and let me put it on my customer case study page on my website, and let me tell my friends about it. And the reason to do that again is because that's actually going to reduce your risk in maintaining your investment in the platform.
So that helps me understand why you're so focused on ownership, because yes, distribution of the code invokes the GPL.
Yeah.
So that helps me understand why you're so focused on owning it. But anyway.
Final words?
Oh, really? Well, it's not a very exciting final word, but I'm not a lawyer either. But I'm pretty sure you can sell a MediaWiki extension and not have it be GPL, and that the GPL doesn't cover extensions to software, provided there's no shared code.
It's not shared code. It's all very murky. It's like it's why dynamic entity of code does that invoke the GPL?
Okay. Well, on practical aspect, there are cases where people sell MediaWiki related software, and with it.
But the Wikimedia Foundation, who owns most of the copyright on MediaWiki, is not interested in suing them. So
Okay. All right. I don't think that. That's true. That's true. This is.
We learned this problem in the Google Oracle battle that happened last week. None of us are lawyers, and when we talk about it, problems abound.
Problems. Yeah, I personally have been looking for a long time for guidance from the lawyers, and I've collected some links, and it's on my website. Look, if you go to freefile.org and look up copyright. So there's freefile.org consulting, but if you look up copyright, there's a bunch of content there. There's Meeker is one of the attorneys. Pam Jones used to do Grok Law, right, and about the whole GPL SCO fiasco. But there's 30 years of Free Software Foundation, Richard Stallman, but those people have not, to my knowledge, they haven't put together good guidance on good contract language, boilerplate language that does work for the enterprise and for the consultant in recognizing the GPL.
Okay, so if we take that as a final remark, and as a mind note for Yaron, that maybe some other iteration of the conference, we could invite a legal expert to give a talk about this. Thanks. It was very good. Thank you very much.